The day my husband was appointed CEO with a $2 million annual salary, I accidentally caught him making out with his green tea secretary. The next day, both were fired. Enraged, he stormed into the chairwoman's office, only to turn pale at the sight that awaited him. Today was Hunter's celebration party. My husband, Hunter Vance, had just been appointed CEO of Vanguard Properties, the flagship real estate subsidiary of Vanguard Holdings. His starting base salary was a cool $2 million a year. I stood in a quiet corner of the grand ballroom at the five-star Manhattan Hotel, quietly observing. I wore a simple beige silk dress. The design was minimalist, but the tailoring was exquisite, though it completely blended in among the glittering, logo-heavy couture of the other corporate wives. I was playing my role perfectly, the lucky, plain housewife who hit the jackpot by marrying a brilliant, rising star. "Congratulations, Natalie." A female colleague of Hunter's walked up, beaming. "You are so lucky. Hunter is brilliant, and he spoils you rotten. Now that he's CEO, you can just sit at home and count the money. You've got the best life." I smiled, a faint, practiced smile I had perfected over the last 3 years. "Thank you. It's all thanks to Hunter's hard work." Just then, applause erupted. Hunter, wearing an expensive Italian suit, stepped onto the stage. He was the undisputed star of the night, tall, elegant, and radiating the arrogant confidence of a man who had just reached the pinnacle of his career. He took the microphone, his eyes sweeping the room with pride. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate," his deep voice echoed. "To get to where I am today, I have many people to thank. But the person I want to thank the most is my wife, Natalie." The spotlight shifted to me. Hunter looked at me, his eyes seemingly full of tenderness. "Thank you for always being my rock, the woman behind the scenes, allowing me to focus on my ambitions." The crowd erupted in applause. Someone even whistled. They admired our love story, but they didn't know. Hunter didn't know, and the whole world didn't know. They didn't know that I, Natalie Sterling, the quiet housewife standing in the corner, was actually the chairwoman and majority shareholder of Vanguard Holdings. The magnificent Vanguard Tower gleaming in the skyline outside, and the very subsidiary he had just been appointed to lead, belonged to me. 3 years ago, I married Hunter when he was just a mid-level sales director. I hid my true identity. I was exhausted by the endless parade of men who approached me solely for my massive fortune. I craved a pure, uncalculated love. A husband who loved me for me, not for my title. Hunter, with his earnest demeanor and relentless drive, made me believe he was that man. But life is not a fairy tale. My decision to promote Hunter to CEO was actually my final test for him. I wanted to see his true colors once he held absolute power and wealth in his hands. Tonight, I got my answer. During his speech, though his words were directed at me, I noticed his gaze lingering just a second too long on the front row. Sitting there was Lauren, his new executive assistant, looking up at him with unbridled adoration. Lauren was the niece of Barbara, my mother-in-law, who had practically begged Hunter to give her a job at the company not too long ago. My chest felt tight. The opulent, suffocating atmosphere made it hard to breathe. I slipped out to a private balcony off the main hall, hoping for some fresh air. The balcony was dark and quiet, lit only by the distant city lights. I had just taken a deep breath when a whiny, flirtatious voice drifted from a hidden corner behind some large potted plants. "Oh, Hunter, you're a CEO making $2 million a year now. You're so powerful." It was Lauren. "But what about that frumpy housewife of yours? My Aunt Barbara says she can't stand her and hopes you dump her soon." I froze. My hands gripped the freezing iron railing. A low chuckle followed. I could never mistake that voice. It was Hunter. "Don't worry about her," he replied, his tone dripping with condescension and indulgence. "That woman is just a temporary placeholder. She's boring and plain. I only keep her around to maintain a stable family image for the board. Just wait, Lauren. Once my position at Vanguard Properties is secure, and I swallow up those golden projects the chairwoman is eyeing, I'll kick her to the curb. The title of Mrs. Vance will be yours soon enough." "Really?" Lauren squealed. "Of course. You're smart, beautiful, and you know how to please me." I didn't hear anything else. My ears rang with a deafening buzz as the wet sounds of their kissing filled the dark corner. My heart, the thing I had worked so hard to protect, so hard to hide, felt like it had been carved out with a rusted knife. 3 years. 3 years of playing the devoted wife. 3 years of giving up my true self to build what I thought was a home. And in return, I was a temporary placeholder, a boring housewife. I leaned against the cold brick wall. No tears fell, but my chest ached so badly I could hardly breathe. Once the pain subsided, all that remained was a terrifying, icy emptiness. A placeholder? Fine. I was a vase, but I was forged from steel. And I was about to show them both just how sharp the shards could be when this vase shattered. I took a deep breath, pushing down the bile rising in my throat. I smoothed my dress, fixed my hair, and pasted that perpetual, gentle smile back onto my face. When I walked back into the ballroom, Hunter and Lauren had just returned from the balcony. Lauren's cheeks were flushed. Hunter looked radiant and smug. Seeing me, he hurried over and slipped his arm around my waist with practiced fake affection. "Where did you go?" "I was looking everywhere for you." I looked up at him and smiled. "Just stepped out for some fresh air." "Congratulations, honey." Hunter laughed loudly. He squeezed my waist and leaned down to kiss my forehead, the same lips that were just on his secretary. I fought down a wave of disgust, leaning quietly into his shoulder, letting the admiring gazes of the crowd wash over us. That night, Hunter got incredibly drunk. On the drive back to our Tribeca condo, he rambled endlessly about his future plans, how many millions he was going to make, and how he would make everyone who ever looked down on him regret it. I just drove in silence. He used the word "we" a lot, but I knew that we didn't include me. It included his young, beautiful secretary. Back at the apartment, he threw himself onto the bed, passing out instantly with a victorious smirk still on his face. I stood over him, the man I once loved, the man I once trusted. Tonight, it all ended. The next morning, I woke up early as usual. I went to the kitchen and made his favorite breakfast, sunny side-up eggs and black coffee. I didn't cry. I wasn't even angry. My mind was eerily calm. I was simply finishing my performance, my final breakfast as his wife. Hunter woke up wearing the same smug expression from the night before. He whistled as he picked out his most expensive suit, standing in front of the mirror to tie his silk tie. He looked at me, quietly clearing the table, and scoffed. "What's wrong with you? Your husband just got the promotion of a lifetime, and you look like you're at a funeral. What, are you scared I'll get rich and leave you?" He laughed out loud, clearly thinking his own joke was hilarious. I didn't say a word, just set his coffee mug on the counter. Just then, Hunter's phone pinged. He glanced at it and shrugged. Probably spam. He went back to adjusting his tie. A second later, my phone pinged too. I had programmed the system so that all executive termination notices sent a blind copy directly to me. Seeing me check my phone, Hunter got curious and picked his up. He swiped the screen, and the smug smile on his face instantly froze. I watched him. I knew exactly what he was reading. It was an email sent from the office of the chairwoman of Vanguard Holdings, a highly classified address known only to the senior board of directors. Asterisk. Subject: Notice of immediate termination and dismissal. Asterisk. I watched as Hunter's face morphed from arrogance to confusion, and finally to a deathly pale white. He opened the email with trembling hands. Asterisk. Dear Mr. Hunter Vance. Asterisk, I recited silently in my head. Asterisk. Following an emergency review, the board of directors has voted to strip you of your title as CEO of Vanguard Properties and terminate your employment, effective immediately. Reason: gross violation of corporate ethics, nepotism, engaging in factional behavior, and actions detrimental to the reputation and interests of Vanguard Holdings. This decision is final and effective immediately. Asterisk. The phone slipped from Hunter's hands, clattering onto the hardwood floor. He stood rooted to the spot, paralyzed. "No, this is impossible," he stammered, bending down to snatch the phone back, reading it over and over. "This is absurd. Who the hell is playing a joke on me? Who dares to fire me?" His phone started ringing. It was Lauren. Hunter frantically answered it. I didn't need to be close to hear her hysterical sobbing through the speaker. Hunter, I just got an email. I'm fired. They said I violated company ethics. What do I do? Why the hell are you crying? Shut up! Hunter roared, his eyes bloodshot. He looked around the apartment like a cornered animal. His eyes landed on the coffee I had just poured. Asterisk smash. Asterisk. He swept his arm across the counter, sending the mug flying. Coffee splattered violently against the pristine white wall. I don't believe this. I'm not fired. I'm going straight to headquarters. I demand to see the chairwoman. I will get to the bottom of this, Hunter screamed. He grabbed his car keys and bolted out the door, forgetting his briefcase. I stood amidst the shattered ceramic and spilled coffee, calmly taking a sip of ice water. Asterisk. Going to see the chairwoman? Be my guest, Hunter. I'll be waiting. Asterisk, I was in no rush. After he left, I finished my water and leisurely cleaned up the mess he had made. I pulled out my phone and dialed my executive assistant, Michael. My voice was ice cold. Prepare car 1 for me. And notify security to prep the boardroom. I'll be hosting an emergency board meeting at 10 a.m. Right away, Madam Chairwoman, Michael replied without a single question. That was why I trusted him. I took off my apron and changed into a custom-tailored, dark navy business suit. I pulled my long hair up into a sharp, immaculate bun and applied light, striking makeup. The woman staring back in the mirror was no longer Natalie, Hunter's submissive housewife. She was Natalie Sterling, the apex predator of Vanguard Holdings. I drove my private car, a sleek Maybach, that Hunter didn't even know existed, straight down to the B1 VIP garage of Vanguard Tower, entering through the private elevator reserved exclusively for the chairwoman. My office was on the 68th floor, the penthouse level of the skyscraper. Floor-to-ceiling reinforced glass offered a sweeping God's eye view of Manhattan waking up in the morning sun. I sat in my familiar leather chair. A hot cup of espresso, prepared by Michael, was already waiting on my desk. Right on schedule, just before 9 a.m., the internal intercom buzzed. It was Michael. Madam Chairwoman, Mr. Vance and Miss Lauren are in the main lobby. Their keycards have been deactivated, and they are causing a scene, demanding an audience with you. I took a sip of the bitter espresso. It cleared my mind. What are they saying? Mr. Vance keeps referring to himself as the CEO and ordering security to open the gates. The young woman is crying. Security is trying to explain that he has been blacklisted. I looked down at the city far below. The yellow cabs looked like tiny ants. Send them up. Use my private elevator. Just the 2 of them. Michael hesitated for a fraction of a second. Understood, ma'am. I disconnected the line, spun my heavy leather chair around, and faced the massive glass window, my back to the door. I could hear the hum of my private elevator shooting up the shaft. Floor 1, floor 30, floor 60, floor 68. Asterisk ding, asterisk the heavy soundproof mahogany doors of the chairwoman's suite burst open. I could hear Hunter's furious, heavy footsteps. Where is the chairwoman? I demand an explanation. Hunter roared, storming into the room. Lauren trailed behind him, her eyes puffy and her expensive makeup ruined by tears. She timidly hid behind his broad shoulders but couldn't stop her eyes from darting around, taking in the absurd luxury of the office. Neither of them could see my face. Hunter impatiently paced around my massive marble desk. I am Hunter Vance, CEO of Vanguard Properties. You people cannot fire me without cause. What is the meaning of this? Who is trying to frame me? Show your face. The silence stretched on. I could hear his heavy, angry panting. Slowly, I pushed my foot against the floor and spun the leather chair around. Asterisk, creak, asterisk. The faint sound of the leather seemed deafening in the dead silent room. Hunter was standing with his hands on his hips, his face flushed red with rage. When his eyes locked onto mine, every muscle in his face paralyzed. The mocking, superior sneer on Lauren's lips froze solid. They stood there, absolutely petrified. The color drained from their faces, shifting from angry crimson to a ghostly, bloodless white. And Natalie. Lauren was the first to speak, her voice trembling, on the verge of a hysterical breakdown. "What are you doing here?" Hunter stood like a statue struck by lightning. His finger trembled violently, pointing straight at my face, but his throat seized up. No sound came out. He rubbed his eyes, stared at me again, as if he were looking at a ghost. I took another sip of my espresso, placing the porcelain cup onto the marble desk with a sharp, echoing Times clack asterisk. I smiled the exact same cold, calculated smile I used in board meetings to destroy rival companies. "Welcome, CEO Vance, and Secretary Lauren. What kind of explanation were you looking for?" I, Natalie Sterling, chairwoman of Vanguard Holdings, am more than happy to provide it. The air in the office grew so thick, you could cut it with a knife. The only sound was the soft hum of the central AC blowing frigid air into the room. Hunter remained completely motionless, his finger still pointing at me, shaking like a leaf in the wind. His entire worldview, his reality, was crumbling right before his eyes. He was the first to snap out of it, but his reaction was a desperate plunge into denial. He shook his head frantically, and actually let out a hollow, manic laugh. "Natalie, babe, stop joking. This isn't funny." He took a step forward, trying to grab my hand. "How did you get in here? Did someone force you to do this? Tell me who put you in that chair to humiliate me." "I'll ruin them." I simply raised a single hand, signaling him to stop. "Hunter, do you really still not understand?" Lauren's legs gave out. She slumped against the wall, shaking violently. "Natalie, please, you need to go home. This has nothing to do with you. Hunter just lost his job. It's not safe for you here." Their sheer ignorance, or perhaps weaponized stupidity, actually made me laugh. It wasn't a loud laugh, just a dark, sarcastic scoff. I picked up my personal phone, unlocked it, and pulled up an audio file. I placed the phone flat on the marble desk, between Hunter and me. Instantly, the dead silence was ripped apart by a whiny, flirtatious voice. "Oh, Hunter, you're a CEO making $2 million a year now. But what about that frumpy housewife of yours?" Followed immediately by the deep, arrogant voice of the man I used to love. "That woman is just a temporary placeholder. She's boring and plain. Once my position is secure, I'll kick her to the curb. The title of Mrs. Vance will be yours soon enough." Hunter and Lauren's already pale faces turned a sickly shade of gray. The recording from the balcony last night echoed flawlessly off the walls of the chairwoman's suite. Hunter stumbled backward, tripping over the leg of a guest chair. The realization hit him like a freight train. The game was over. The panic in his eyes vanished, rapidly replaced by a cornered, psychotic rage. Since the truth was undeniable, he chose to attack. You set me up?" he roared, dropping the affectionate babe. "You lied to me. You acted for 3 years. You're the billionaire chairwoman, and you played the pathetic little housewife. Did you think I was some kind of clown? A joke to you?" He pointed a trembling finger inches from my face. His fury at being outsmarted completely overrode his fear of being fired. I calmly reached out and stopped the audio recording. "I lied to you." I stood up, slowly walking around the desk toward him. The sharp times, click-clack times of my stilettos against the marble floor sounded like a ticking time bomb. I hid my identity because I wanted a husband who genuinely loved me, not a gold digger chasing my net worth. I stopped inches from him, staring directly into his bloodshot eyes. "But you married me because you thought I was boring, submissive, and plain. You thought I was a stepping stone, a perfect little trophy wife to decorate your fake family life, didn't you?" I tilted my head. "Between the two of us, who is the real liar? Who is the real gold digger?" My words pierced him like a dagger through the heart. He choked, utterly speechless. At that exact moment, Lauren completely broke. Realizing Hunter was a sinking ship, she threw away whatever dignity she had left. She dropped to her knees and crawled toward me, desperately trying to grab the hem of my skirt. "Madam Chairwoman, I'm so sorry. Natalie, I was wrong. I had no idea who you were. I was manipulated. Hunter seduced me. He told me he didn't love you anymore. He promised to marry me. I'm the victim here, Natalie, please. Please let me go. She sobbed hysterically, her tears and snot completely ruining her high-end mascara. I looked down at Lauren groveling at my feet, then shifted my gaze to Hunter. I gave a cold, mocking laugh. Hunter, did you hear that? She says you seduced her. Just last night you two were swearing eternal love, and today she throws you to the wolves? Hunter, the endlessly arrogant man who always believed he was the smartest person in the room, realized Lauren was shifting all the blame onto him. Whatever shred of pride he had left vanished. He immediately dropped to his knees as well, not to beg me for forgiveness, but to save his own skin. Natalie, honey, I was wrong. He crawled closer to Lauren and pointed a furious finger right in her face. It was this little slut. She seduced me. She's Barbara's niece my mother sent her. My mother knew I was getting promoted, so she planted her in my office to trap me. Yes, my mother. She set this up to ruin me. He was throwing his own mother under the bus. The sheer lack of spine made me physically nauseous. I only ever loved you, Natalie. She put a spell on me. Please, just forgive me this one time. Before I could even respond to this pathetic display, the heavy mahogany doors were violently shoved open again. Asterisk, bang. Asterisk, my mother-in-law, Barbara, barged in. She hadn't taken the VIP elevator. She had clearly taken the staff elevator and run up the fire stairs, likely fighting her way past lobby security. She had no idea I was the chairwoman. She had only heard vague rumors that her son had been fired, and she had rushed down here to throw a massive tantrum, just like she did back at our apartment complex, whenever things didn't go her way. Barbara was panting heavily, her hair a wild mess. She saw Hunter and Lauren kneeling on the floor, and then she saw me standing tall and imposing in a designer suit. Her rage instantly ignited. You jinx! She shrieked, pointing a crooked finger right at my face. What the hell are you doing here? I knew it. It's you. Your bad luck cursed my son. You came down here and threw a hysterical fit so they'd fire him, didn't you? She lunged at me, raising her calloused hand, fully intending to slap me across the face. Hold it right there. Michael, who had been standing silently near the door, barked a command. Two massive security guards instantly stepped forward and grabbed her arms, pinning her back. Let me go. Who do you think you are? I'm disciplining my daughter-in-law, Barbara thrashed wildly. Seeing his mother, Hunter didn't feel an ounce of shame. Instead, he grabbed onto her presence like a drowning man finding a piece of driftwood. He screamed at the top of his lungs, Mom, help me, save me, my wife. Natalie. She's the chairwoman of the entire corporation. She set a trap for me. She fired me. Hunter's desperate scream hit Barbara like a physical blow to the head. She froze. Her thrashing stopped instantly. She snapped her neck to look at me, then at Hunter, and finally took in the jaw-dropping luxury of the executive suite. Her eyes widened to the size of saucers, her jaw hitting the floor. Her body began to tremble violently. In a fraction of a second, she figured it out. She violently shoved the security guards away not to attack me, but to collapse to her knees. She fell to the floor even faster than Hunter and Lauren had. She began bowing so hard her forehead audibly smacked against the marble floor. Asterisk thud. 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 Asterisk Madam Chairwoman. Natalie, my sweet daughter, she wailed, her tone pulling a whiplash-inducing 180-degree turn. Please, forgive me. I didn't know. I'm old. I'm senile. Please spare Hunter. He's my only son. It's all my fault. I'm the one who told him to leave you for Lauren. I didn't know you were this rich. Oh God, please forgive me. I stared down at the three of them, writhing on the floor like worms. The husband I had loved. The mother-in-law I had bent over backwards to respect. The cousin I had treated like a little sister. 3 fake, disgusting masks. 3 leeches perfectly willing to trample anyone in their way. And now they were begging for my mercy only because I was wealthy. I turned my back to them, too disgusted to look for another second. I walked to my desk and pressed the intercom. Security. Yes, Madam Chairwoman. I looked out the window, my voice entirely devoid of emotion. Throw all 3 of them out of this building. Blacklist them permanently. They are never to set foot on Vanguard property ever again. Understood, ma'am. I heard the heavy boots of the security detail moving in, the pathetic wailing of Barbara, the furious, panicked screaming of Hunter as he realized his life was truly over, and the high-pitched sobbing of Lauren. I didn't turn around. The noise faded down the hall until the heavy wooden doors clicked shut. The ensuing silence in the office was heavier than the chaos. I canceled the emergency board meeting. Now was not the time to explain myself to the shareholders. I needed to clean up this radioactive personal mess first. I instructed Michael to handle the day-to-day operations while I drove back to the Tribeca condo. This place was once called home. I had bought it with my own cash long before the wedding, but I had put Hunter's name on the deed as a co-owner, just to stroke his fragile male ego and make him feel like the man of the house. This was the place where I hung up my Armani suits to put on a flower-dusted apron. I sat alone in the dead-silent living room. The apartment was pristine, everything in its perfect place, but it felt as cold as a tomb. I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat in the dark, waiting. I knew Hunter wouldn't just walk away quietly. Just as I predicted, close to midnight, the front door rattled violently. Asterisk. Bang, bang, bang. Asterisk. The pounding was aggressive and psychotic, accompanied by Hunter screaming from the hallway. "Open the door!" "Natalie, you lying bitch. Open the damn door." I knew if I didn't open it, he would break it down. I calmly walked over and unlocked the deadbolt. The second the door cracked open, Hunter shoved it so violently I was thrown backward, falling hard onto the hardwood floor. He stormed into the apartment, reeking of cheap alcohol and pure, unadulterated rage. He was no longer the polished CEO from this morning. He looked like a wounded, rabid animal. You dared to frame me?" He lunged forward, pointing a shaking finger in my face. His hair was a rat's nest, his eyes manic and bloodshot. I scrambled to my feet, backing away to keep my distance. "I didn't frame you. You dug your own grave. Don't give me that bullshit," Hunter roared. He looked frantically around the living room, needing a physical outlet for his fury. His eyes locked onto an artisan ceramic vase I had bought years ago, something I treasured, which I had told him I bought with pennies I scraped together doing freelance illustration. Asterisk, crash. Asterisk. He grabbed the vase and hurled it directly at the wall. It shattered into a million pieces. "You loved playing poor, didn't you? You loved putting on a show." He started tearing the room apart. He flipped the heavy glass coffee table. He grabbed our framed wedding photo and smashed it over his knee. "You're a billionaire. You lied to me for 3 years. You looked at me like I was a circus clown, didn't you?" I stood quietly in the corner, my hand tightly gripping my phone. I dialed 911. Hunter saw the phone and lunged like a predator, snatching it out of my hand with brutal force. "Who are you calling? The cops? Your little security guards?" Asterisk, smash. Asterisk. He hurled my phone directly into the flat-screen TV. The screen sparked and went dead. "Listen to me, Natalie Sterling." He was panting heavily as he stalked forward, pinning me against the wall. "Did you think firing me was the end of it? Did you think just because you have money you can do whatever you want?" He planted both hands on the wall beside my head, trapping me. His face was mere inches from mine. I could smell the vile mixture of stale booze and the sour stench of total defeat. "I don't give a damn if you're the chairwoman or the Queen of England," he hissed, grinding his teeth. "You are going to give me my career back. You are going to reinstate me immediately." I looked him dead in the eyes, my voice freezing cold. "You're insane." "I'm insane?" "Yeah, maybe I am," he bellowed, spit flying into my face. "Let me tell you something. If you don't give me my job back, if you don't sign over 50% of your shares in this goddamn Vanguard empire, I will destroy you. I will make sure the whole world knows exactly what kind of two-faced, manipulative snake you really are." Asterisk. Ah, so there it was. The ultimate goal. Asterisk. Not his career. 50% of the conglomerate. The gold digger had finally ripped his mask completely off. I looked at the man I had slept next to for 3 years, the man I genuinely believed I would grow old with. And now, he was standing over me, drunk and desperate, extorting me for half my net worth. These weren't the words of a husband. These were the words of a terrorist. A wave of profound revulsion churned in my stomach. I no longer saw Hunter. I saw a greedy, parasitic monster stripped of his glamorous disguise. I had thought his cheating with Lauren was the worst thing he could do to me. I was wrong. This was his true nature. And what gives you the right? I took a small step back, my tone dropping to sub-zero. Hunter suddenly burst into laughter, a grating, psychotic cackle that echoed through the ruined apartment. The right? He stumbled away from me and staggered over to his old filing cabinet in the corner, a rusty thing I had almost thrown out months ago. The bottom drawer was his private space. I had never once touched it out of respect for his privacy. He yanked it open, pulled out a thin manila folder, and threw it aggressively at my chest. Is this enough of a right for you? The folder hit the floor, spilling a few blurry photographs. I calmly knelt down and picked them up. They were surveillance photos, candid shots of me and Michael, my executive assistant, on a business trip in Miami. The angle was deliberately manipulated to make it look like we were holding hands when I was simply taking a document from him. Other photos showed us eating dinner, a standard business dinner, but through the lens of a stalker, it looked like an illicit affair. Accompanying the photos were copies of old corporate financial reports with specific numbers circled in malicious red ink. I let out a dry, dismissive laugh, dropping the garbage back onto the floor. You think you can blackmail me with this tabloid trash? Trash! Hunter roared. He knew the photos weren't enough. He stepped uncomfortably close, leaning down to whisper directly into my ear, enunciating every single word. Then what about the death of Hayden? Your dear, dead fiancé? My entire body went rigid. It felt like an invisible hand had just crushed my windpipe. Hayden. I hadn't allowed anyone to speak that name in 3 years. I hadn't allowed myself to remember. Hayden was my first love. The man who laid the very first bricks of Vanguard Holdings alongside me. We were the perfect team, building a startup together, dreaming of the future. But 3 years ago, just weeks before our wedding, Hayden died in a horrific rock climbing accident. It was the darkest, most shattering trauma of my life. His tech company, his life's work, was subsequently merged into Vanguard, and I carried the weight of both our dreams on my shoulders, building it into the titan it was today. I had buried that agony at the bottom of my soul. And now Hunter, the man I had opened my heart to in order to heal, was digging up the corpse. I did some digging, Hunter sneered, clearly thrilled to see the color drain from my face. Your mutual friends told me you two had a massive screaming match right before that climbing trip. You claim it was a tragic accident. But was it really? He let out a dark, guttural chuckle. Or did you push him off that cliff so you could steal his company? Shut your damn mouth, I screamed. It was the very first time I had ever lost control in front of him. Scared? Hunter gloated, his eyes wide with triumphant madness. If you don't meet my demands, if I don't see 50% of your assets, I'm taking this theory to the press. I'm taking it to the FBI. I will tell the whole damn world that the great, wealthy chairwoman of Vanguard Holdings is actually a black widow who murdered her fiancé for power. Let's see if your pristine reputation and your billion-dollar stock price survive that. I stared at him. The white-hot fury faded, leaving behind a coldness that seeped into my very marrow. The absolute last thread connecting us, the minuscule, lingering shred of marital affection, had just been severed by the most vile, unforgivable slander imaginable. I didn't just marry a cheater. I married a sociopath. I looked at Hunter, no longer as a betrayed wife, but as a CEO looking at a target to be neutralized. I didn't see the man I cooked dinner for. I saw a cockroach trying to extort me by smearing the most sacred memory of my life. My blinding rage crystallized into terrifying clarity. I didn't argue. I didn't explain myself. Words were wasted on vermin. I shoved him hard in the chest, making him stumble backward. Get the hell out. Hunter froze. He had expected me to cry, to panic, to fall to my knees and negotiate. He never expected this icy detachment. What did you say? I said. Get the hell out of my house. I repeated, my voice devoid of a single human emotion. Before I call building security to drag you out by your hair. You! Hunter flared up, But when he met my dead, shark-like eyes, he instinctively took a step back. Perhaps he finally realized the submissive house cat was actually an apex predator. Fine. You think you're so smart, he pointed a finger at me. I'm giving you 24 hours, 50% of Vanguard, or your life is over. You choose. He stumbled around, violently kicked the front door open, and stormed out into the night. When the door slammed shut, the apartment plunged back into suffocating silence. I stood perfectly still among the shattered glass and ruined ceramics. I didn't shed a single tear for Hunter, but tears welled up and spilled over anyway. I cried for Hayden. I cried for my first love, whose memory had just been defiled. I cried for my own profound stupidity in trusting the wrong man. I aggressively wiped my tears away. Asterisk enough. Asterisk, I walked into the master bedroom and locked the door. I bypassed the smashed phone in the living room. I moved a painting off the wall, opened a hidden wall safe, and pulled out my secure, secondary smartphone. The phone reserved strictly for corporate warfare. The chairwoman's phone. My first call was to Michael. Michael, my voice was entirely flat. I want you to immediately freeze every single corporate account, credit card, and asset tied to Hunter Vance. Contact all our banking partners. That includes the Platinum Visa I gave his mother, Barbara. Cancel it immediately. Repossess the Mercedes he's driving. It's registered to the company fleet. Do it right now. Understood, Madam Chairwoman, Michael replied, without a microsecond of hesitation. I thought of Barbara, the mother-in-law who constantly belittled me as a frumpy nobody who didn't know how to make a dime, while simultaneously maxing out my supplementary credit card on designer bags and luxury spa days. I thought of Hunter, who called me a placeholder vase while using the money I earned to buy Rolexes, Armani suits, and lavish gifts for his mistress. My second call was to Samantha Hayes, the most ruthless, feared divorce and asset litigation attorney in Manhattan. Samantha. It's Natalie, Chairwoman Sterling. Calling at this hour. What's the emergency? Samantha's voice was sharp as a tack. I want a divorce. I cut straight to the chase. From Hunter Vance. Expedite it, and I want him to leave with absolutely nothing. Samantha paused for a moment. I understand all your assets are protected by an ironclad prenuptial agreement, and Vanguard was acquired prior to the marriage. This penthouse is also a premarital asset. Legally, he has zero claim to anything. However, men like him rarely walk away quietly. He will likely fight it. He won't just fight it, I interrupted. He just threatened me. He demanded 50% of the conglomerate, or he'll falsely accuse me of murdering my late fiancé to the press, draft a civil suit for extortion, defamation, and blackmail, have it ready. I heard Samantha inhale sharply on the other end. I understand completely. Don't worry, Natalie. I will draft the divorce papers and the asset forfeiture agreement tonight. He will be served first thing in the morning. I hung up. I powered down the phone and collapsed onto the cold, empty bed. I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling until the sun came up. The next morning, while Hunter was likely sleeping off his hangover in some hotel, convinced he had me backed into a corner, an email from the law offices of Samantha Hayes landed in his personal inbox. Attached were the divorce filings and the asset settlement agreement. He was getting 0 cents. I wasn't there to witness it, but I could vividly imagine Hunter's apocalyptic rage. Instead of my desperate surrender, he woke up to a brutal legal execution. I spent the entire morning at Vanguard HQ, tearing through the backlog of executive decisions I had neglected while playing house. I needed the board to know their chairwoman was back, and more lethal than ever. Around 10:30 a.m., Michael knocked and entered my office. He looked slightly amused but trying to hide it. Madam Chairwoman, Attorney Hayes' office just called with an update. I didn't look up from the financial reports. What happened? About 30 minutes ago, Barbara and Mr. Vance stormed into the law firm. I raised an eyebrow. Barbara's credit card had definitely been declined this morning. I pictured her trying to buy some obscenely expensive jewelry, only to have the machine beep red. With her temper, she definitely called Hunter, and realizing they were both suddenly penniless, they marched over to find a common enemy. Miss Hayes reported, Michael continued. that Barbara didn't even try to negotiate. The moment she entered the reception area, she threw herself onto the floor and started throwing a tantrum. I sighed, internally. I had seen this exact performance too many times in our apartment lobby. According to the paralegals, Michael held back a smirk. She started wailing at the top of her lungs, screaming, asterisk, "Oh Lord. My daughter-in-law is a billionaire, and she's starving her own mother-in-law. She fired my son, and now she's cutting off our livelihood. Everyone look at how evil and abusive this rich woman is." Asterisk, I rubbed my temples. How utterly pathetic. Just yesterday, she was on her knees in my office, begging for mercy because I was wealthy. Today, realizing she wasn't getting a dime, she instantly weaponized the poor victim routine. "And Mr. Vance?" I asked. He threatened Samantha Hayes. He screamed that he was going to sue you for marital fraud and sue the law firm for aiding and abetting a criminal. He swore he would never sign the divorce papers and that he was going to destroy your life. How did Samantha handle it? Flawlessly, Michael smiled. She quietly pressed record on her dictaphone, then signaled building security. Before they were physically dragged out, she just smiled and said, asterisk, every threat and act of disorderly conduct has been recorded. We will see you in federal court. Oh, and the Tribeca condo is my client's premarital property. I strongly advise you to pack your bags before the eviction marshals arrive. Asterisk, I shook my head. Money truly has a terrifying power. It can force people to grovel at your feet, and it can strip them of every ounce of human dignity when it's taken away. Barbara and Hunter weren't angry that I was evil. They were angry that I was evil times, and times refusing to pay them for it. I looked out the window. Michael, draft an internal memo. Appoint the VP of Operations as interim CEO of Vanguard Properties. I want it back to business as usual immediately. I don't have time to watch their pathetic circus. Following the meltdown at the law firm, Hunter and Barbara seemingly went quiet. Most likely, they were struggling to digest the reality that I wasn't backing down and were busy plotting something much dirtier. I decided to make one final trip to the Tribeca condo. The place was still a disaster zone from Hunter's drunken rampage. I wasn't there to clean. I was there to retrieve the few personal belongings that truly mattered to me, particularly Hayden's keepsakes, before my lawyers legally sealed the property. I stood in the center of the ruined living room. This place was supposed to be a sanctuary. I had truly believed I had found simple happiness here. Now, it was just a pile of ashes, exactly like my marriage. As I was packing away an old photo album, the doorbell rang timidly. I frowned. Hunter never rang the bell. He banged on the door. So did Barbara. I checked the security camera monitor. It was Lauren. I was genuinely surprised. What was she doing here? She no longer looked like the arrogant, smug executive assistant from my office. Through the grainy camera, she looked utterly exhausted, her eyes swollen, her face devoid of makeup and deadly pale. She didn't look like she was mourning Hunter. She looked like she was mourning her own destroyed future. I hesitated, but eventually unlocked the door. I wanted to see what this sacrificial pawn's final move was. The door opened. The moment Lauren saw me, her legs turned to jelly, and she immediately moved to drop to her knees. "Natalie, Madam Chairwoman." "Stand up," I commanded, my voice like a cracking whip. I don't make a habit of speaking to people groveling on the floor. "What do you want?" Intimidated by my aura, Lauren hastily scrambled to her feet, unable to meet my eyes. I know I was wrong. I'm begging you to spare me. I'm young. I was stupid. It was Hunter. He promised me the world. He said he didn't love you anymore, that he was going to marry me. I was tricked. I honestly had no idea you were the... I let out a harsh scoff, cutting her off. You didn't know I was the chairwoman, so it was perfectly fine to sleep with my husband. If I was just a regular, working-class housewife, ruining my life would have been acceptable to you. No, that's not. Lauren stammered, her face turning green. I was standing right on that balcony the night of the party, I said slowly, deliberately. I heard you tell him to dump his frumpy housewife. Are you really the victim here, Lauren, or were you the mastermind? Lauren froze. She had no idea I had heard the entire conversation. She knew the Innocent Victim Act was completely dead. She bit her lip so hard it almost bled. Then, as if making a desperate final gamble, she frantically dug into her designer purse and pulled out a small, black USB flash drive. "I know you hate Hunter." She practically shoved the drive toward me like a life preserver. I have something that can help you. These are audio files and photos proving Hunter has been sleeping around with several other female clients behind my back. And proof that he's been taking illegal kickbacks from construction contractors for Vanguard properties. I recorded and screenshotted everything. I'll give it all to you. Just please withdraw my termination. I need this job. I have a family back in Ohio to support. I stared at the black USB drive, then up at Lauren's pleading face. It was pathetic, yet utterly repulsive. They claimed to be madly in love, yet she was secretly hoarding blackmail material against him just in case things went south. I calmly reached out and took the USB drive. "Thank you. The corporation will find this very useful." Lauren's eyes lit up with a desperate, manic hope. "So my job. I accept this evidence," I enunciated clearly, "because it pertains to corporate felony fraud within Vanguard Holdings. As for you, you engaged in gross ethical violations by sleeping with an executive. Your termination is permanent and non-negotiable. Get out." The spark of hope in Lauren's eyes died instantly, replaced by a hollow void. "You can't." I began closing the door, but just before the latch clicked, I opened it an inch. Lauren flinched, looking back at me with a sliver of renewed hope. "Oh, by the way," I said mildly, "you should keep a copy of whatever is on this drive. Go find my ex-mother-in-law, Barbara. She's the one who pulled strings to get you this job. Let's see how well she protects the beloved niece she's so proud of." I slammed the door shut, leaving Lauren standing in the hallway, looking like a ghost. The sacrificial pawn had finally realized that she was nothing more than a pawn. The black USB drive felt heavy and filthy in my palm, much like Hunter and Lauren's relationship, built on lies, ending in mutually assured destruction. I wasn't surprised Lauren had done this. A woman willing to destroy another woman's marriage was certainly willing to sell out her partner in crime to save her own skin. The evidence on this drive, the embezzlement, the other affairs was highly useful, but it wasn't what kept me awake at night. The sheer depravity of Hunter and Lauren I already understood. What truly made my blood run cold was his threat regarding Hayden. He actually dared to use Hayden, the deepest, most agonizing trauma of my life, a man who rested in peace, as leverage in his filthy little war. He thought this was my Achilles heel. He thought it was his ultimate weapon. He was dead wrong. It wasn't a weapon. It was the final, unforgivable line he had just been stupid enough to cross. I immediately called Michael. "Come to my office. Bring the cybersecurity sweepers." When Michael arrived, he plugged the USB into a heavily firewalled standalone terminal to ensure it wasn't loaded with malware or trackers. Once cleared, he plugged it into the main display. Everything Lauren promised was there. Audio recordings of Hunter negotiating illegal kickbacks with contractors, screenshots of vile, graphic texts he sent to female business partners, messages far more disgusting than anything he said to Lauren. "Madam Chairwoman, this is a smoking gun. We can hand this to the FBI for wire fraud and embezzlement right now," Michael said, his jaw tight. I shook my head. "Not yet. Corporate fraud just sends him to white-collar prison. I want him to pay for that slander." I looked at Michael. "I want you to use every resource Vanguard has. Find out exactly why Hunter knew about Hayden's accident and exactly when he started digging into it." Michael understood the gravity of the order. He bowed his head. "Understood. I'll put the best private investigators on it immediately." I handed him the USB. "Keep the embezzlement files secure. As for this," I pointed to a specific subfolder Lauren had meticulously labeled *other mistresses*. "Find out who this specific woman is." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Hayden, about the day he kissed me goodbye before driving up to the mountains. The pain I thought had scarred over was now ripped wide open, bleeding all over again. The next morning, Michael walked into my office. His face was uncharacteristically grim. He placed a thin, highly classified dossier on my desk. "Madam Chairwoman," Michael began, his voice dropping an octave. "According to the preliminary investigation, Mr. Vance began digging into Hayden's death exactly 6 months ago." My heart stopped. 6 months ago. 6 months ago was exactly when he started his intense affair with Lauren. It was exactly when he began noticing signs that I was testing him for the CEO position. "What did he do?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. "He traveled to Hayden's hometown in upstate New York. He tracked down Hayden's old climbing buddies and local rangers near the accident site. He deliberately planted malicious questions, asking things like, 'Did anyone see Natalie up there with him?' Or, 'I heard they had a violent argument before he died.' He was seeding rumors. I gripped the edge of my mahogany desk until my knuckles turned white. My God. I didn't just marry a cheater. I married a sociopath. He hadn't just reacted in anger the other night. He had been meticulously planning to blackmail me, weaponizing my dead fiancé as his trump card, for half a year. 3 years of marriage meant absolutely nothing to him compared to a hostile corporate takeover. And ma'am, Michael added gently, trying to soften the blow, "There's a highly ironic detail regarding Miss Lauren's files. Go on. The woman in the other mistresses folder. She wasn't sleeping with Mr. Vance. That folder contains proof that Lauren herself was having an affair with a senior executive at Liberty Trust Bank. A married executive." I stared at Michael, completely stunned, before letting out a dark, cynical laugh. What an absolute farce. Lauren had handed over proof of Hunter's cheating, entirely unaware she had accidentally included the receipts of her own infidelity, proving she was cheating on the man she was cheating with. "The bank executive," I said, my voice turning to ice. "Who is his wife?" Michael tapped his tablet. "Victoria Kensington, heiress to a massive steel conglomerate. She is notorious in Manhattan high society for her vicious, unforgiving temper. She takes no prisoners." I smiled. A real, genuine smile. "Excellent. Send this anonymous care package to Mrs. Kensington. Photos, videos, everything. Let's see how the real queen bee deals with this fake little worker bee." After setting the board, I allowed myself a moment of silence. I knew Hunter and Barbara were desperate. With their credit cut off, blacklisted from the legal community, and totally humiliated, they wouldn't just roll over, especially Hunter. When he realized I wasn't intimidated by his threat about Hayden, he would go nuclear. Exactly as I predicted, 3 days later, the first media hurricane made landfall. It didn't start in the reputable financial journals, but in the sleazy online tabloids, gossip blogs, and Twitter threads. Michael walked into my office that morning, his face tighter than a drum. He placed an iPad on my desk without a word. I picked it up. The clickbait headlines screamed at me. Asterisk breaking. Secret billionaire chairwoman of Vanguard Holdings exposed. A marriage of lies. Asterisk asterisk. The dark truth behind the fall of a $2 million CEO. Did the wife set him up? Asterisk asterisk. The gold digger trap. Poor husband destroyed by billionaire wife. Asterisk. But the most toxic, heavily retweeted article carried the headline, asterisk, the mysterious death of the ex-fiancé and the rise of the Vanguard Queen. Coincidence or murder? Asterisk. The articles didn't make direct allegations to avoid libel suits, but the insinuations were incredibly venomous. They quoted an anonymous close source, which I knew for a fact was Hunter, claiming I had sociopathically pretended to be a poor housewife to manipulate him. That Hunter, a brilliant, self-made executive, was fired simply because he discovered my dark secrets. But the most unforgivable part was the section about Hayden. They dug up the climbing accident from 3 years ago. They heavily implied we had a violent, relationship-ending fight right before he left. They openly questioned how convenient it was that right after his tragic death, his tech startup was immediately absorbed by Vanguard, launching my career into the stratosphere. They painted me as a ruthless, calculating black widow who stepped on the corpses of her lovers to reach the top. I read every single word. The anger evaporated, leaving only a numbing, profound agony. Hunter had actually done it. He had dragged my reputation and Hayden's peaceful rest through the mud, feeding us to the media vultures. He wanted the public to believe I was a cold-blooded killer to justify his extortion attempt for 50% of the company. The corporate phones were ringing off the hook. Shareholders were demanding emergency calls. Wall Street partners were spooked. The flawless reputation of Vanguard Holdings, the empire Hayden and I had bled to build, was shaking under the weight of this filthy smear campaign. "Madam Chairwoman, what are your orders?" Michael asked anxiously. "The PR crisis team is begging for a war room meeting. Should we issue a cease and desist to kill the rumors?" I took a deep breath. The air in the office felt suffocating. I looked out the window at the bleak, overcast Manhattan skyline. "Hunter," I whispered to the glass, "you just crossed the point of no return." I turned to Michael, my eyes devoid of any hesitation or mercy. "He wants a dirty war? I'll show him a hurricane. Assemble the PR team. I'm not hiding behind lawyers. I am going on the record. But not with these gutter tabloids." I looked Michael dead in the eye. "Contact the Wall Street Journal. Tell them Natalie Sterling is granting an exclusive, on-camera interview. Today, I'm blowing this wide open." That afternoon, the grandest conference room at Vanguard Tower, usually reserved for hostile takeover negotiations with international delegates, was rearranged. The massive oak table was moved, replaced by two elegant armchairs facing each other. Professional studio lighting was rigged up. I deliberately didn't use my office. I wanted this to look like an official, corporate execution. The senior correspondent from the WSJ, a famously ruthless and piercing female journalist, was already seated. She watched me with intense, calculating eyes, undoubtedly wondering what kind of monster was hiding behind the elegant exterior of the woman at the center of this massive scandal. I walked in. I wasn't wearing my intimidating navy power suit. I wore a simple, flawless pearl-white tailored dress, my hair pulled back into an elegant knot. I wanted to face this storm not just as a billionaire CEO, but as Natalie Sterling, a human being. "Thank you for agreeing to sit down with us, Chairwoman Sterling," the journalist began. "The public is currently consumed by the controversy surrounding you, specifically why you chose to hide your billionaire status from your husband for 3 years." I looked directly into the camera lens, my expression completely serene. Like any other woman, I spoke slowly, my tone shedding its corporate edge to become deeply personal. I just wanted a pure, uncomplicated love. I was exhausted by men who looked at me and only saw dollar signs and stock options. I naively thought that if I stripped away the wealth, if I was just a regular, working-class woman, I could find a man who loved my soul. I offered a sad, self-deprecating smile. Unfortunately, I put my faith in a monster. The journalist nodded, her aggressive posture softening slightly. "So the true reason, Mr. Hunter Vance was terminated as CEO. Was it, as he claims, because he discovered your secret identity?" "No," I replied, my voice snapping back to absolute authority. "Hunter Vance was terminated because he committed gross violations of corporate ethics and company policy. With my own 2 eyes, at his very own promotion gala, I caught him engaging in an illicit affair with his executive assistant inside the hotel. I stated it without an ounce of embarrassment. Vanguard Holdings is built on a foundation of unyielding integrity. We cannot entrust billions of dollars of shareholder capital to a man whose moral compass is entirely rotten." The board voted unanimously to terminate him, and I fully endorsed it. My blunt, unapologetic honesty visibly caught the journalist off guard. She immediately pivoted to the most explosive topic. "And what about the rumors surrounding your late fiancé, Hayden? The media is alleging." I raised a hand, sharply cutting her off. This time, my voice trembled not from fear, but from raw, barely contained emotion. "Hunter can insult me," I said, fighting to keep my voice from breaking. "He can try to destroy me, but he has absolutely no right, no jurisdiction, to defame the dead. Hayden was my first love, my partner, my savior. His death was the single most devastating tragedy of my life." I took a sharp breath. I never intended to drag his memory into the public eye today, but to protect his honor, I am forced to. I signaled to Michael, who stepped into the frame and handed the journalist a thick manila envelope stamped with the official seal of the New York State Police. "That," I said, my voice turning to hardened steel, is the official unredacted police and coroner's report from 3 years ago. Hayden died in a tragic climbing accident. He fell. There was zero evidence of foul play, zero evidence of external force. It was a 100% fatal accident. Furthermore, the subsequent merger of his tech firm into Vanguard Holdings was fully authorized and legally signed off by his surviving family. I turned my gaze back to the camera, staring straight through the lens at Hunter. The rumors currently circulating are vicious, calculated lies. They are the desperate, sickening tactics of a cornered man attempting to extort me for 50% of my corporate assets. My legal team is currently filing multi-million-dollar defamation suits against every single publication, blog, and social media account that has propagated this extortion attempt. The interview dropped that evening. It wasn't just printed. The video was blasted across every digital platform the WSJ owned. It hit the internet like a tactical nuke, and the shockwave blew Hunter's narrative to ash. Public opinion whipped around 180 degrees in a matter of hours. The image of a strong, fiercely intelligent female CEO, betrayed but utterly unbroken, captured the public's absolute sympathy. Shareholders and Wall Street partners flooded my inbox with apologies for ever doubting me. Conversely, Hunter became the most hated man on the internet overnight, a parasitic gold digger, a cheating hypocrite. And thanks to a leaked Ring camera video from my condo building, showing him violently kicking my door and screaming, he was branded an abusive maniac. But the worst title he earned was grave robber, a man so depraved he would smear a dead man for a payout. I sat in my office, scrolling through the furious public backlash against him. Asterisk Hayden. Asterisk I whispered to the empty room. Asterisk, I'm so sorry I let them drag your name into this dirt, but you can rest now. I protected you. Asterisk. The media firestorm surrounding me began to die down after the WSJ interview. The public was firmly on my side, and Hunter didn't dare show his face in Manhattan. He was financially frozen and publicly radioactive. But I knew the chessboard still had one piece left in play. Lauren. I wasn't there to witness it, but a few days later, Michael gave me the full debrief of what happened. It was a spectacle wilder than reality television. The anonymous package I sent to Victoria Kensington, the bank executive's wife, worked like a charm. Victoria, as Michael had warned, was not a woman who quietly cried into her Hermes pillows. She was a Steele Harris apex predator who despised being made a fool of. When she received the high-def photos and videos of Lauren and her husband in various luxury hotel beds, she didn't confront her husband. She went straight to the source. Victoria tracked down the cheap, run-down motel in Queens, where Lauren was hiding out after I fired her. One afternoon, Victoria didn't just show up alone. She brought a small army of her wealthiest, most terrifying socialite friends. They pulled up to the dingy motel in a fleet of black Escalades, causing an immediate scene. Ironically, as Michael recounted, my ex-mother-in-law Barbara happened to be there too. Cut off from my credit cards and desperate, Barbara had tracked down her successful niece, hoping to either scrounge some cash or team up to plot against me. Victoria and her Upper East Side hit squad kicked down the door to Lauren's motel room. They didn't exchange pleasantries. The second Lauren opened the door, Victoria grabbed her by her hair extensions and dragged her out onto the outdoor walkway. An absolute bloodbath of a public shaming ensued. Screaming, cursing, the sound of manicured hands slapping skin. I pay for my husband's lifestyle, Victoria shrieked, landing a vicious slap. I didn't fund his bank accounts so he could buy cheap little homewreckers like you. You think you can sleep your way to the top of Manhattan, you cheap trash. Lauren was completely pulverized. Her clothes were torn, her hair was a disaster, and she could do nothing but cover her face, sobbing and begging for mercy. Barbara, seeing her beloved niece getting beaten to a pulp, instinctively tried to play the tough matriarch and jumped in. What do you think you're doing? Stop it, that's my niece. Victoria, running purely on adrenaline and rage, whipped around to face Barbara. Your niece? Oh, so you're the bloodline that breeds these little home-wrecking parasites. No wonder. In her attempt to play the hero, Barbara was completely collateral damage. Victoria's friends shoved the older woman to the ground. slapping her across the face for having the audacity to defend a mistress. The entire chaotic melee from Victoria, kicking the door in, to Lauren begging on her knees, to Barbara getting shoved into the dirt, was filmed on iPhones by several motel residents. Within an hour, the footage was going viral on Twitter and TikTok, generating headlines even trashier than mine. Asterisk breaking. Wife of Liberty Trust Bank exec destroys husband's mistress at sleazy motel. Asterisk karma. Evil mother-in-law and cheating niece get destroyed by Upper East Side socialites. Asterisk. I watched the video. Michael forwarded me. I didn't feel a sense of vindictive joy. I just felt profound exhaustion and disgust. You reap what you sow. Lauren was paying the ultimate price for her ambition not by my hand, but by the hand of another woman she had betrayed. And Barbara, who spent her life scheming to manipulate her son into marrying better options, was now globally humiliated alongside her favorite niece. The viral beatdown of Lauren and Barbara eventually faded from the trending topics, but the storm inside Vanguard Holdings was just brewing. I sat in my office, staring at the black USB drive Lauren had given me. It was a desperate offering from a drowning rat, trying to drag its captain down with it. I plugged it into my secure terminal and reviewed the files again. The recordings of Hunter negotiating kickbacks, the screenshots of his illicit texts. This wasn't just a guy taking a few bribes. This was a highly organized, systemic racket. Hunter, using his power as a senior director before his promotion to CEO, had been rubber-stamping heavily inflated contracts for a select few preferred vendors. He wasn't an amateur. He was incredibly meticulous, covering his tracks perfectly. But Lauren, desperate for leverage, had documented the back-channel communications. I immediately summoned Michael. Hunter's situation isn't just an HR violation anymore, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. I suspect massive corporate fraud. He's been gutting this company from the inside out. His foundation has been rotting for years. I issued a direct order. Establish an independent internal audit strike team immediately. Pull every single project, every single vendor contract Hunter Vance signed off on over the last 3 years. I want to know exactly how much of Vanguard's money he stole. The audit was conducted in absolute secrecy, but with terrifying speed. Vanguard's elite forensic accountants, spearheaded by Michael, tore through years of ledgers. 3 days later, Michael walked into my office. The usual stoicism on his face was replaced by a barely contained, simmering rage. He dropped a massive, thick binder onto my desk. "Madam Chairwoman," Michael said grimly, "we have the final numbers, and it is catastrophically worse than we imagined." I opened the binder. Spreadsheets, wire transfer diagrams, offshore routing numbers. Mr. Vance didn't put his name on anything. Michael briefed me. He used a distant cousin on his mother's side, Barbara's relative, to establish 3 distinct shell companies. These companies were registered as commercial janitorial services, landscaping, and minor construction suppliers. Hunter deliberately bypassed bidding protocols to award these shell companies contracts priced 30% to 40% above market value. On paper, the paperwork was flawless because he had final executive sign-off. I flipped to the very last page. The grand total, the final sum. Michael pointed to the bold red number at the bottom that Hunter Vance has embezzled from Vanguard Properties over the last 24 months, funneled entirely through his mother's shell companies, is $4.5 million. Asterisk $4.5 million. Asterisk. I took a slow, deep breath. Now it all made perfect sense. I finally understood why he was so unbelievably arrogant. Why he felt perfectly comfortable showering Lauren in diamonds and buying himself Rolexes. Why he was so confident he could kick me to the curb. The $2 million CEO salary I had just granted him. He hadn't even collected his first paycheck, yet he had already paid himself a massive fortune using my money, my sweat, and Hayden's legacy. With undeniable, ironclad proof of felony embezzlement in my hands, I knew I couldn't let Hunter breathe free air for another second. He was out there somewhere, publicly disgraced, dumped by his mistress, likely acting like a rabid dog. But a rabid dog can still bite. His threat to smear Hayden's name had to be permanently eradicated. I called attorney Samantha Hayes and instructed her to set up one final meeting. Tell him, I ordered Samantha, that this is his absolute final opportunity to negotiate the divorce settlement. Tell him if he doesn't show up, our next meeting will be in federal court, and we will be discussing a lot more than just alimony. The meeting was set at Samantha's law firm Neutral Territory, heavily monitored with audio and visual recording equipment. I arrived early, sitting calmly in the glass-walled conference room, sipping English breakfast tea. Hunter arrived late. He was no longer the polished alpha male CEO, nor the violent, drunk brute from that night at the condo. He looked like a walking corpse. He had lost at least 20 pounds, his face covered in unkempt stubble, his clothes wrinkled and stained. He looked like he had aged 10 years in a week. The internet destruction and Lauren's viral downfall had clearly taken a brutal toll on his psyche. But the moment he saw me sitting there, his pathetic demeanor vanished, replaced by a look of concentrated, venomous hatred. "Why did you call me here?" he rasped, collapsing into the leather chair opposite me. "Here to offer me some charity? I told you, I don't want your pity." He was still desperately clinging to his delusion of leverage. 50% of the corporation. If you don't sign it over, tomorrow morning the truth about Hayden hits the front page of the New York Post. I will end you. Samantha opened her mouth to speak, but I raised my hand, silencing her. I looked at Hunter with absolute, terrifying calm. "Hunter, I didn't bring you here to negotiate your extortion attempt." I slid the massive, heavy forensic audit binder Michael had given me across the mahogany table. "I brought you here to look at this." Hunter frowned. He clearly thought this was another psychological mind game. He let out a condescending scoff and flipped open the first page. His scoff died in his throat. He saw the names of the shell companies. He saw his own digital signatures authorizing the inflated invoices. He saw the intricate flowcharts of wire transfers ending up in bank accounts registered to Barbara's distant cousin. The sickly gray color of his face drained away entirely, leaving him looking like a wax mannequin. He snapped his head up to look at me, and the hatred in his eyes was instantly replaced by pure, unadulterated terror. The primal fear of a criminal caught dead to rights. "You," he stammered, his hands shaking violently. "You forged this. This is fake. You're framing me." I laughed, a dry, hollow sound. "I forged your IP addresses? I faked Vanguard's corporate seals? Did I fake the $4? 5 million sitting in your cousin's offshore accounts?" I stood up, planting both hands on the table, leaning menacingly toward him. "Would you like me to call the chief internal auditor in here to verify it? Or perhaps we should just call the FBI's white-collar crime division and have them verify it with you in an interrogation room?" Hunter collapsed back into his chair, as if his spine had been removed. He gasped for air, cold sweat pouring down his forehead. He finally understood. He realized that his pathetic threat about Hayden was child's play compared to the nuclear bomb sitting on the table. I sat back down and folded my hands. "Hunter, you have two options." I slid the original divorce papers he had refused to sign across the table. "Option 1. You sign these divorce papers today. You accept the ironclad prenuptial agreement. You walk away with absolutely nothing. The Tribeca condo remains mine, and you will surrender your keys right now. In exchange, I tapped my manicured fingernail against the audit binder. I will officially classify this $4.5 million discrepancy as an internal accounting error. I will let you walk out of this building a free man." I stared directly into his soul. Option 2. You refuse to sign. The second I walk out of these glass doors, this binder goes directly to the United States Attorney's Office. With felony wire fraud, corporate embezzlement, and money laundering totaling $4.5 million, how long do you think you'll survive in federal prison? 15 years? 20? The conference room descended into a silence so profound you could hear a pin drop. The only sound was Hunter's ragged, wheezing breaths. He stared at the two documents on the table. On the left, freedom, absolute humiliation, and total bankruptcy. On the right, the complete destruction of his entire life. His hands shook uncontrollably, resting on the table. He truly had aged. Not from time, but from the catastrophic collapse of his own greed and arrogance, he knew he had absolutely no way out. The Hayden threat was a double-edged sword. It could hurt my PR, but it couldn't force me to pay him. But this audit binder? It was a pair of steel handcuffs. I didn't rush him. I let him drown in the reality of his choices. Looking at him, for a fleeting second, I didn't even feel hatred anymore. I just felt profound pity. Pity for a man who literally had the world in his hands, a billionaire wife who genuinely loved him, endless wealth, a skyrocketing career, and threw it all into a wood chipper because he was greedy and arrogant. I also pitied myself. Pity for wasting 3 years of my youth trusting a thief and a pathological liar. After what felt like an eternity, Hunter slowly raised his head. His eyes were bloodshot and completely hollow. He didn't look at me. He looked at Samantha. "Pen," he croaked. Samantha pushed a Montblanc pen and the divorce agreement toward him. Hunter's trembling hand gripped the pen. He flipped to the signature pages without bothering to read a single clause. He knew reading it was pointless. He signed his name on the line marked Times Hunter Vance *. The signature, which I used to admire on corporate memos for its bold, confident strokes, was now a jagged, pathetic scrawl. He signed the final page, legally agreeing to leave the marriage with 0 assets. After he dropped the pen, Samantha thoroughly checked the signatures, then locked the documents away in her briefcase. The war was over. But Samantha pulled one last item from her folder, a small, rectangular slip of paper, and pushed it toward Hunter. "Sign the receipt for this, as well." Hunter flinched, shrinking back into his chair, as if it were an explosive device. "What? What is this? Another trap?" I spoke, my voice devoid of any inflection. "It's a cashier's check. For Femme, null." Hunter's head snapped up, staring at me in absolute shock and disbelief. "I don't want you starving to death on the streets," I said coldly. "The condo is mine. You are evicted as of this second. The corporate Mercedes has been repossessed. Your accounts are frozen. You literally do not have a single dollar to your name." I looked at him, my final look at the man who was once my husband. "Take the $5,000. Consider it my final act of charity for the 3 years we spent legally bound. You can use it to buy a bus ticket back to Ohio or anywhere else you want to go to restart your pathetic life, if you even can." And from this moment forward, I emphasized every syllable. Never let me see your face again. It was the ultimate, soul-crushing humiliation. For a man who just days ago was screaming demands for 50% of a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, this $5,000 was more toxic than cyanide. It was a handout, a final, ringing slap to whatever fragile masculinity he had left. Hunter's hand hovered over the check, trembling, wanting to reject it. But harsh, brutal reality won. He needed the money to survive. He snatched the check, crumpling it tightly in his fist. He stood up, swaying so badly he almost knocked over the chair. He didn't say thank you. He didn't scream a curse. He just dragged his heavy, defeated feet out of the conference room. A few days after Hunter signed the divorce papers, I hired a contractor to change every lock on the Tribeca condo. A professional hazmat-level cleaning crew came in, scrubbing away every stain, every broken piece of glass, every lingering trace of Hunter. The apartment was restored to pristine condition, but the silence inside was deafening. I decided to list it on the market immediately. I wanted absolutely nothing, tying me to the memory of this failed marriage. I was sitting in my chairwoman's suite, reviewing the new quarterly reports, desperately trying to force my brain back into corporate mode. Vanguard Holdings was my life. It was the legacy Hayden and I had built. I couldn't let it suffer because of a parasitic ex-husband. Suddenly, my personal cell phone buzzed. It was the old number, the one I used when I was just a housewife, a number only close family and friends had. I had meant to deactivate it, but I forgot. I glanced at the screen. An unknown number. I frowned, about to decline it, but some strange intuition made me swipe answer. "Hello?" Total silence on the other end, followed by a weak, trembling voice. "And Natalie. Is that you, Natalie?" My heart skipped a beat. It was Barbara. But gone was the shrieking, arrogant, demanding tone she used at the law firm. This was the voice of a broken, exhausted, utterly desperate old woman. I remained silent. "Natalie." Oh God, Natalie. She began to sob hysterically. Please, please don't hang up. I know you hate me. I know I was horrible to you. I was so wrong. Barbara, I finally spoke, my voice like absolute zero. Why are you calling me? It's Hunter. She gasped for air between sobs. He's gone. He took the money and disappeared. He didn't even say goodbye to me, Natalie. I don't know where he went. I wasn't surprised in the slightest. Hunter, with $5,000 in his pocket, was undoubtedly running as far away from his humiliation as possible. And a narcissist like him, who only ever cared about his own survival, would never spare a second thought for the mother who had enabled his worst traits. I have nothing left, Natalie, Barbara wailed. The credit card you gave me was declined everywhere. I went to the grocery store to buy milk, and my card was rejected. I don't have a single dollar. It's so humiliating. She rambled on. I went back to Ohio, but all our relatives, everyone is avoiding me. After that viral video, the video of Lauren getting beaten up at the motel, the whole town knows what we did. They spit on me at the church. They call me a pimp who trained her niece to steal husbands. I have no house. I have no money to eat. Natalie, her voice morphed into a pathetic, groveling whine. Have mercy on me. You're a billionaire. Your money could last 1,000 lifetimes. Please, just give me a small allowance for my retirement. I'm begging you. I know I was wicked. I promise I will never bother you again. I listened to her pathetic begging, feeling absolutely nothing. No pity, no anger, a flat line. I remembered every single insult she hurled at me. Asterisk frumpy nobody. Barren. Gold digger. Asterisk I remembered how she actively encouraged Hunter to cheat on me. I remembered how she dropped to her knees in my office, not because she was sorry, but because she found out I was rich. I let out a long sigh. Barbara, I really shouldn't have answered this phone. No, Natalie, please. Listen to me very carefully. I cut her off, my tone brutally definitive. The day you planted your niece in my husband's office, deliberately trying to destroy my marriage so your son could upgrade. Did you ever imagine this outcome? The day you bowed to me in my office, you were bowing to my bank account. The day you threw a tantrum at the law firm, you were throwing a tantrum because I cut off your allowance. From the very beginning, all you ever saw was money. You are not sorry that you treated me like garbage. You are only sorry that you treated a Times billionaire Times like garbage. Natalie, I swear. If you want retirement money, I delivered my final sentence. Go find your son, the son whose monstrous ego you inflated his entire life. As for me, I am legally divorced from your family. I owe you absolutely nothing. Natalie, please, don't. I ended the call and permanently blocked the number. The very last invisible thread connecting me to that family was severed. My chest felt incredibly light. The universe truly had a way of balancing the scales. The Hunter Vance scandal wasn't just a messy tabloid divorce. For me, it acted as a massive stress test on my empire, exposing a terrifying vulnerability in Vanguard's HR and internal auditing protocols. How did a man like Hunter, a man with zero moral compass and an insatiable greed, manage to climb the corporate ladder so quickly? How did he manage to bypass our elite auditors and siphon $4.5 million out of the company without triggering a single red flag? I had placed far too much blind faith in the corporate machine I had built. I was so distracted by playing the role of the perfect, oblivious housewife that I had neglected the very soul of my life's work. The next morning, I convened an emergency meeting of the board of directors. The grand boardroom on the 68th floor, the same room where I had confronted Hunter and Lauren, was now packed to capacity. Every major shareholder and C-suite executive was present. The air was thick with tension. They had all read the WSJ interview. They knew their chairwoman had been betrayed, but they didn't yet know that Vanguard Times had been betrayed. I walked in. I didn't look like an exhausted divorcee. I radiated the lethal, commanding aura of a CEO navigating a Category 5 crisis. I didn't offer a polite greeting. I gave a subtle nod to Michael. Instantly, the massive LED screen behind me lit up. It wasn't displaying quarterly growth projections. It displayed the entirety of Hunter Vance's forensic audit. The flowcharts of the shell companies, the inflated vendor invoices, and glowing in bold red font, asterisk asterisk $4,500,000. Asterisk asterisk. The entire boardroom erupted in shocked gasps. If my WSJ interview was a PR nuke, this was a hydrogen bomb dropped directly into the boardroom. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My voice sliced through the chaos like a katana. Dead silence fell over the room. Did you think I called an emergency board meeting to discuss my personal tabloid drama? No. I called you here because we have a catastrophe inside our own house. I stood up and slowly paced the length of the mahogany table. We allowed a parasite to nest in our core. A man who not only lacked basic human decency, but actively committed federal fraud, hollowing out the foundation of Vanguard Properties. The Hunter Vance scandal is a violent wake-up call to our own staggering complacency. I slammed my palms onto the table. Where is the vulnerability? It exists because we have become obsessed with metrics, KPIs, and aggressive profit margins, completely abandoning the most critical metric of all, corporate ethics. I locked eyes with the senior executives around the table. Starting today, Vanguard Holdings undergoes a massive internal purge. I do not want soulless, profit-generating machines. I want human beings with integrity. I am establishing an independent internal affairs division, reporting directly to the office of the chairwoman, commanded by Michael. This division has absolute authority to audit any department, any executive, at any time, without prior notice. I would rather employ a manager who scores a 7 inches competence and a 10 inches ethics, I said, my voice ringing with absolute authority, than a man who scores a 10 inches competence and a 0 in ethics, like Hunter Vance. If anyone sitting at this table feels they cannot operate under this new paradigm, submit your resignation to HR by 5 p.m. today. I will accept it immediately. But if you stay, you play by my rules. Not a single person dared to breathe, let alone speak. They realized the era of absentee leadership was officially over. The Queen had returned to her throne. These powerful, wealthy executives, men used to moving markets with a phone call, sat in stunned silence before undeniable proof of corruption. They saw my ruthless efficiency, but perhaps they still didn't understand that my fury wasn't just about the stolen money. It was about the betrayal of a legacy. I nodded to Michael again. The LED screen shifted. The ugly spreadsheets, the $4, $5 million theft, the shell companies all vanished, replaced by a single image. It was a scanned, yellowing, hand-drawn architectural sketch. It depicted a sprawling, hyper-modern green eco-city. Small wind turbines, rainwater recycling filtration systems, and roofs blanketed in next-generation solar panels. At the bottom of the sketch, handwritten in blue ink, were the words, Asterisk Vanguard Green, Our Dream, Hayden and Natalie. Asterisk. I looked at the screen, a familiar, dull ache spreading through my chest. This was the true soul of Vanguard Holdings. Do any of you remember the foundation Vanguard was built upon? I asked, my voice losing its aggressive edge, replaced by a profound, melancholic weight. It wasn't built on concrete, steel, or a relentless pursuit of quarterly dividends. I told them about Hayden, the co-founder, my former fiancé, the man I loved more than life itself. I spoke of our shared vision to build a conglomerate that was not only incredibly profitable, but socially responsible. Hayden always told me, I whispered, almost speaking to myself, if we do business without a conscience and without trust, the empire will eventually collapse. We can build 1,000 skyscrapers, but if we don't build trust, it's all just sand in the wind. I turned back to face the board. The Hunter Vance scandal is the ultimate proof of that philosophy. He lost the trust of his partners, and he lost his conscience. He is a walking insult to Hayden's legacy. I looked back at the sketch. For the last 3 years, I let this dream collect dust. Because of my own personal trauma, I buried myself in aggressive expansion and profit chasing. I allowed men like Hunter men, who worship money and nothing else to thrive here, completely forgetting the soul of this company. I offered a bitter smile. And ironically, it was the very man who betrayed me, the man who tried to weaponize Hayden's tragic death to extort me, who accidentally resurrected this dream inside me. I took a deep breath, squaring my shoulders. Effective immediately, Vanguard Holdings is resurrecting Project Vanguard Green. This will be our flagship strategic initiative moving forward. We are not just going to build luxury condos. We are going to build sustainable infrastructure for the future. When people hear the name Vanguard, I concluded, I want them to think of a corporation with immense wealth, yes, but also a corporation with integrity. That is the only way I, and all of us, can truly honor the man who helped build this. The tension in the room broke. The initial fear of an executive purge was replaced by genuine awe. The board members looked at me with renewed respect. They saw the vision and the heart of their leader. The meeting didn't end in fearful silence. It ended with a standing ovation. I had finally cleaned my own house. I was physically exhausted to my core, but my soul felt lighter and cleaner than it had in years. I didn't go back to the Manhattan penthouse. I didn't go back to the Tribeca condo. I got in my car and drove 2 hours north, deep into the quiet, affluent suburbs of Connecticut, to where my parents lived. My parents were retired university professors. They had lived quiet, academic lives, only ever wanting their daughter to be happy and safe. Their home was a beautiful, modest colonial house, surrounded by a massive garden filled with blooming jasmine, the scent of my childhood. I parked in the driveway and walked up the path. From a distance, I saw my father meticulously pruning the rose bushes on the porch. My mother was sitting on a wrought iron bench, snapping green beans for dinner. My mother looked up. The bowl of beans slipped from her lap, scattering across the grass. "Natalie," she stammered. I walked faster. I had spent weeks holding it all together, projecting the image of an unbreakable billionaire CEO. But seeing my mother's graying hair and the deep worry lines on my father's face, my armor shattered. I ran to her and collapsed into her arms. "Mom." She didn't ask questions. She just held me incredibly tight, patting my back as if I were a little girl with a scraped knee. Then, she started to cry. "Oh, my sweet girl. Why did you have to go through all this?" "I saw the news, Natalie. My heart is completely broken for you." I sobbed against her shoulder. I let out all the tears I had swallowed down over the past month. Here, I didn't have to be Chairwoman Sterling. I was just their daughter. My father quietly walked over, setting his pruning shears down. He let out a long, heavy sigh, a sigh carrying the weight of a father's immense sorrow. "I knew from the very beginning that Hunter wasn't an honest man," my dad said, his voice raspy. I looked up, wiping my eyes. "The first time you brought him here, he was too eager." His words were too polished, but his eyes were constantly darting around, calculating. I knew he was dangerously ambitious. "But you loved him." My father's voice cracked. "You had already suffered so much, losing Hayden. We didn't have the heart to stop you from trying to find happiness again." "Did we make a mistake?" "No." I shook my head violently, wiping my tears. "You didn't make a mistake. I did. I was so naive. I was so stupid." I sat down on the bench next to the spilled green beans. I thought if I hid my wealth, if I lived a simple life, I would find genuine love. I tried so hard to be the perfect housewife, the perfect daughter-in-law. But I was wrong. If you start a relationship based on a massive deception, how can you expect the other person to be honest with you? My mother sat next to me, taking my hand in hers. Her hands were rough from gardening, but they felt like the safest place on earth. "Being naive is not a crime, Natalie," my mother said softly. "The crime belongs to the liar, the one who exploited that naivety. You did nothing wrong. You just wanted a normal, happy life." Her words washed over me like a warm wave, soothing the bleeding wounds in my heart. She was right. I wasn't wrong to want love. "It's over now," my father said, his voice finding its strength again. Karma caught up to him. "You taught him a lesson he will never forget. It's in the past. You are our daughter, and you are stronger than you realize. Now, go inside and wash your face. Your mother is making your favorite clam chowder tonight." I looked at my father, then my mother. The pain of the betrayal was still there, but I knew I wasn't alone. I had this sanctuary. I had the scent of jasmine to guide me home. I wasn't afraid of the storms outside anymore. I stayed in Connecticut for 2 days, For 48 hours, I completely ignored my corporate phone. I didn't read a single news article. I just puttered around the garden, helped my mom cook, and listened to my dad's old academic stories. My soul was thoroughly cleansed and reset. That faint scent of jasmine in the breeze was better than 100 hours of expensive Manhattan therapy. On the third day, I drove back to Vanguard Tower. As the Maybach pulled through the VIP gates, I felt fundamentally different. I was still chairwoman Natalie Sterling, but my heart had found the peace of the girl I used to be. Michael walked into my office to deliver the morning briefing. He updated me on the internal audits, the positive market reaction to the WSJ interview, and the onboarding of the new CEO of Vanguard Properties. Everything was rapidly stabilizing. As the briefing concluded, Michael hesitated for a split second. "Madam Chairwoman, there is a minor update regarding Miss Lauren." I looked up from my tablet. Lauren. The ambitious secretary, the niece Barbara was so proud of. I had almost entirely forgotten she existed after the motel incident. Go ahead. According to the private investigators, Michael maintained a strictly professional tone. She has completely hit rock bottom following the viral incident in Queens. Her reputation as a homewrecker was so thoroughly publicized that she was blacklisted by every corporate HR department in the city. No one would hire her. Did she move back to Ohio? Yes, she was forced to pack her bags and return to her hometown, Michael said, but ironically, the viral video made it to Ohio before she did. Her parents are reportedly conservative, working-class people. Unable to handle the immense shame and the gossip from the local community, they completely disowned her. I let out a quiet sigh. A tragedy. But a tragedy entirely engineered by Barbara, who pushed her niece into a CEO's bed, by Hunter, who exploited her, and by Lauren's own unbridled greed. Disowned, broke, and unemployable, Michael continued, his voice tinged with a clinical sort of pity. The last report indicated she is currently working at a highly questionable, run-down dive bar in a neighboring Rust Belt town. Her future is effectively erased. I closed my eyes. The image of the fresh-faced, wildly arrogant secretary, demanding I leave my husband, flashed in my mind. Then the image of her sobbing on my floor. And now, fading away into a dive bar in the middle of nowhere. A spectacular, catastrophic fall from grace. Did I feel vindicated? No. I just found it incredibly sad. A life thrown into a brick wall by its own choices. She wanted millions. She wanted to step on the necks of others to reach the penthouse. She paid with her dignity and her entire future. All right. I opened my eyes, my voice neutral. Call off the investigators following her. She is no longer a threat to Vanguard. She chose her path. She has to walk it. Understood, ma'am, Michael nodded. I looked out the window. Lauren had met her fate. Barbara had met hers. The only one left was Hunter, the wounded, rabid dog who dared to drag Hayden's name through the mud, still lurking out there somewhere. After Michael's update on Lauren, I didn't ask about her again. Her life had swerved into a dark, dead-end alley, and it had absolutely nothing to do with me anymore. Barbara had also received the first harsh lesson for her decades of manipulation, but I knew the lead actor in this tragicomedy hadn't taken his final bow. Hunter. I had ordered Michael to keep tabs on him. A cornered animal who just watched $2 billion slip through his fingers wouldn't just lie down and die. I wasn't afraid of him, but I needed to know what he was doing to protect Vanguard and Hayden's memory. A few weeks passed in eerie silence. Hunter seemed to have evaporated. He hadn't returned to the Tribeca condo, he hadn't contacted Barbara, and he hadn't been spotted in New York. Perhaps, I thought fleetingly, the $5,000 severance actually did send him off to start a quiet, new life. But I was wrong. I had underestimated his greed and vastly overestimated his capacity for self-reflection. Last week, Michael entered my office, looking genuinely perplexed. "Madam Chairwoman, we located Mr. Vance, and his situation is dire." According to the PI reports Michael read off, Hunter hadn't gone far to start over. He took the $5,000 and fled to his rural hometown in Ohio, though a different town than where his mother was currently miserable. For a normal person in rural Ohio, $5,000 was a decent cushion to find a job and an apartment, but Hunter was addicted to the lifestyle of a Manhattan CEO. He was addicted to being worshipped. He didn't go home to rebuild. He went home to play king. He used the cash to buy rounds for old high school buddies at local bars, bragging about his days as a high-rolling executive, pretending he was just visiting from his multi-million-dollar life. But $5,000 burns fast when you're buying top-shelf liquor for the whole bar. When the money ran low, instead of getting a job, Hunter turned to the fastest, most desperate way to maintain his illusion: underground gambling. He hit local illegal poker games and sports bookies, convinced his superior intellect would win his fortune back. But a man stripped of logic and desperate for cash never wins. In less than 2 months, the $5,000 was gone. Worse, he ran up a massive, 5-figure debt with the local loan sharks. The PIs located him after hearing rumors in town. They witnessed Hunter being physically dragged out of a dilapidated dive bar by 2 massive thugs, beaten to a bloody pulp in the gravel parking lot, begging on his knees for an extension on his debt. The image was a far, far cry from the immaculate, bespoke-suited CEO at the Manhattan Gala. He was a bruised, drunken vagrant, mocked by his own hometown. Hearing this, I didn't feel a shred of joy. I just felt an overwhelming exhaustion. He had a chance to live a normal life, and he threw it into the gutter to feed his diseased ego. "Ma'am," Michael added, "he disappeared from Ohio a few days ago. It appears he fled the loan sharks. But our trackers just pinged him. He's back in New York." My heart gave a slight jolt. Back in New York? A man with $0, hunted by the mob. Why come back to the most expensive city in the world? He was out of options. "A cornered beast," I murmured. "He's going to do something incredibly stupid. Keep a 24/7 detail on him. I want to know his endgame." I spent the next few days on high alert. I wasn't scared of Hunter physically, but a desperate man is unpredictable. I beefed up security around my parents' estate in Connecticut, just in case. I knew he didn't come back to apologize. I was reviewing the final blueprints for the Vanguard Green Initiative when Michael burst into my office. It was the first time I had ever seen him look panicked. "Chairwoman, we know why he's back." I dropped my pen. "Tell me." Michael took a breath. He kept a copy of the USB drive, the forensic audit of his own embezzlement that Lauren gave us. I froze. I had been too careless. Of course, Lauren had given me a copy, and of course, Hunter would have kept a backup of his own leverage, even if that leverage incriminated him. "What is he doing with it?" "He's making contact with Pinnacle Holdings," Michael said, causing me to physically scowl. Pinnacle Holdings was our absolute fiercest competitor in the Manhattan real estate sector. "He's asking for $500,000, Michael continued. "In exchange, he's offering to sell Pinnacle the unredacted, internal Vanguard financial files proving his embezzlement. He thinks if he sells the proof of corruption, he can pay off the Ohio mob and flee the country. And at the same time, Pinnacle can leak the documents to the SEC to trigger a federal investigation into Vanguard and tank our stock. It's his final revenge." I leaned back in my chair. A truly venomous plan. He was willing to burn the entire building down just to make sure I caught fire. What he failed to realize was that selling proof of his own embezzlement was essentially selling his own signed confession to the FBI. "He's completely lost his mind, ma'am," Michael said. "He thinks he has the upper hand." I thought for exactly 3 seconds. Asterisk. This is it. Asterisk. This was the fatal mistake I had been waiting for. I gave him $5,000 to walk away. He chose self-destruction. Fine. I would happily hand him the detonator. "Michael," I ordered, "get Richard Thorne on my private secure line. Tell him Natalie Sterling wants to chat." A few minutes later, the line connected. Richard Thorne, the CEO of Pinnacle Holdings, was a legendary Wall Street shark. Well, Chairwoman Sterling," his booming voice echoed over the speaker. "I hear you've been cleaning house over at Vanguard. Quite the bloodbath." "Good afternoon, Richard," I replied smoothly. "I'm calling to give you a heads up. It seems a piece of garbage I recently threw out, Hunter Vance, is trying to sell himself to you. He's offering stolen corporate documents. Are you interested? Richard chuckled. He understood the game immediately. What do you need, Natalie? I want him caught in the act, I stated coldly. Agree to his terms. Set up a meeting to buy the drive. Do this for me, and Vanguard Holdings will owe Pinnacle a very lucrative favor down the line. What do you say? Richard laughed out loud. When Natalie Sterling asks for a favor, I don't refuse. Consider it done. $500,000 for front row seats to this show? Worth every penny. I'll have my people arrange the meet. The trap was set. Richard's fixers arranged to meet Hunter at a quiet, upscale coffee shop in Brooklyn the following afternoon. Hunter was undoubtedly ecstatic, thinking he was about to score $500,000 in cash, completely unaware he was booking a one-way ticket to federal prison. The moment I hung up with Richard, I called Samantha Hayes. Samantha, my voice was pure ice. Call the FBI's white-collar division and the NYPD. We are officially reporting Hunter Vance for corporate espionage, extortion, and theft of trade secrets. We have the $4.5 million embezzlement audit ready, and a live sale of stolen data is about to take place. I hung up. I sat in my office, watching the clock tick down. Asterisk Hunter. I gave you an out. You chose the cliff. Have a nice fall. Asterisk. I didn't go to the coffee shop in Brooklyn. I had zero desire to see Hunter's face when the cuffs clicked shut. I stayed in my penthouse office on the 68th floor, watching the sunset bleed over the Hudson River. At exactly 6 p.m., Michael called me from an encrypted line. He was sitting in an unmarked FBI command vehicle, a block away from the coffee shop. Madam Chairwoman, Michael whispered. Target has arrived. He's wearing a baseball cap and a medical mask. He looks extremely paranoid. Are Pinnacle's people inside? Yes, sitting in the back booth. The briefcase with the bait money is on the table. I could visualize the scene perfectly. Hunter's bloodshot eyes locked onto the aluminum briefcase, his shaking hands sliding the black USB drive across the table, his blinding greed completely masking the reality that he was literally handing the federal government his own arrest warrant. They're making the exchange, Michael whispered. He's opening the briefcase to check the cash. He has the money. The FBI is moving in. Go, go, go. Through the phone, I heard the faint, muffled sounds of shouting, chairs scraping, and glass breaking. Target secured, ma'am, Michael reported. He tried to run, but they tackled him. He's in cuffs. I exhaled a long, deep breath and hung up. It was over. The justice system would handle the rest. An hour later, Michael returned to Vanguard Tower. He looked drained, but the tension in his shoulders was gone. It was a textbook sting operation, ma'am, Michael briefed me. They recovered the USB with the audit files, and the bait money was secured. Mr. Vance was transported directly to federal holding. How did he react? Total panic. He was screaming your name, claiming you set him up. But when Attorney Hayes and our legal team arrived at the precinct and dropped the $4.5 million forensic audit on the interrogator's desk, he completely broke. Michael paused, taking a breath. During the interrogation, he confessed. He confessed to absolutely everything. I nodded. I expected nothing less. A coward like Hunter would never take the fall alone. He detailed the entire embezzlement scheme, the inflated contracts, the shell companies. Michael hesitated. And, ma'am, he gave up Barbara. He threw his mother under the bus to the feds? Yes. He told the FBI that Barbara was the mastermind. He claimed she manipulated him into doing it because, and I quote, asterisk Natalie is a billionaire, but she's cheap. She wouldn't give us a dime, so we had to take it. Asterisk. He told them Barbara sourced the distant cousin to act as the proxy for the shell companies, and he was just following her plan. I closed my eyes. What a truly beautiful family. The son sells out the mother pimps out the niece sleeps with the husband, a nest of vipers, finally eating each other alive. The FBI immediately dispatched agents to Ohio to serve an arrest warrant on Barbara for conspiracy to commit wire fraud and money laundering, Michael said. I opened my eyes and looked out at the city. Where is she now? Living in a rundown trailer park outside her hometown. Total outcast. Just then, Michael's phone buzzed aggressively. He answered it. his expression twisting into something incredibly complex. Yes, yes, I understand. Thank you. Michael hung up and looked at me. Chairwoman. Breaking news from the FBI field office in Ohio. What happened? When the federal agents arrived at the trailer park to execute the arrest warrant, Barbara began screaming and fighting them, claiming you were framing her. But when the agents showed her Hunter's signed confession, where he explicitly named her as the mastermind to save himself, she collapsed? Yes, Michael said quietly. She suffered a massive stroke right there in the dirt. The ambulance took her away, but the medics told the agents it's severe. She will likely be permanently paralyzed on the right side of her body. I went completely still. I had anticipated Hunter going to federal prison. I had anticipated Barbara facing a judge. But I never imagined the final act playing out like this. Barbara, a woman who spent her entire miserable life scheming, manipulating, and obsessing over wealth to elevate her precious son, was ultimately pushed into a wheelchair in federal custody by that very same son. Karma truly spares absolutely no one. Several months later, the federal trial for Hunter Vance took place. I didn't attend. On the morning the verdict was to be read, I stayed in my office. The federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan was swarming with national press. The case of the cheating, embezzling CEO, and the secret billionaire wife had remained a tabloid obsession. The media desperately wanted me to show up, to have a dramatic face-off with my ex-husband. But I had zero desire to ever look at Hunter Vance's face again. I didn't care if he begged for forgiveness or screamed curses. Every single emotion I ever felt for that man, love, hatred, disappointment, was completely dead. Showing up would only feed the circus and pollute my own peace. Samantha Hayes and Vanguard's army of corporate litigators represented my interests as the victim of the fraud. I simply asked Michael to patch a secure, audio-only feed from the courtroom to my office. I didn't need to see him. I just needed to hear the final period placed at the end of this nightmare. I sat at my desk, unable to focus on the paperwork. The crackle of the courtroom mic, the low hum of the gallery, and the stern voice of the federal judge echoed through my speakers. Samantha had texted me earlier, describing Hunter's appearance. He was wearing a drab prison jumpsuit, looking like a hollow shell. He had lost 50 pounds. His hair was rapidly graying. He looked ancient, broken, and completely dead inside. He was no longer the roaring beast from the condo. He had pled guilty. The evidence, the USB from Lauren, the sting operation with Pinnacle, the Vanguard audit, and the testimonies of the bribed contractors was an insurmountable mountain. When the judge allowed him a final statement before sentencing, Hunter cried. Real, pathetic, ugly tears. He begged the judge for leniency. He blamed his mother for manipulating him. He blamed his young, beautiful secretary for tempting him. He blamed the stress of corporate America. He blamed everyone and everything in the universe, except the man in the mirror. The federal judge was entirely unmoved. Wire fraud, corporate embezzlement, money laundering, and attempting to sell stolen trade secrets were not crimes that warranted sympathy, especially for millions of dollars. And then, I heard the judge's voice, cold and absolute. Asterisk. The defendant, Hunter Vance, is hereby sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. Asterisk 18 years. I closed my eyes and leaned back in my chair. A third of his lifespan. He was walking into a federal penitentiary as a middle-aged man, and he would walk out as an old, gray ghost. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I just felt a crushing, infinite emptiness. The price of greed and betrayal was just so incredibly devastating. And what about Barbara? I asked Michael, who had been listening silently next to me. As a co-conspirator and proxy for the shell companies, she was facing serious federal time, Michael reported. But, following the stroke, she is permanently paralyzed on her right side. She is confined to a wheelchair, unable to bathe or feed herself, and requires 24/7 medical care. The federal judge took her catastrophic medical condition into account. So, she was sentenced to 3 years of federal probation, confined to medical house arrest in Ohio. 3 years, paralyzed, with absolutely no one to care for her. I thought of Barbara, the arrogant woman who sneered at my clothes, who prayed her son would dump me for a better option. Now, she was trapped in a broken body, rotting in a cheap rented room, despised by her neighbors, and utterly, totally alone. I stood up and walked to the window. The Manhattan skyline was brilliant against the blue sky. "Michael," I said softly, "it's truly over. The gavel has dropped. It's time for me to clean up my own life." I went back to the Tribeca condo one last time, not as a wife, but as a landlord, inspecting a property before handing over the keys. The cleaning crew had removed the debris, but the invisible stench of failure still lingered in the air. I had tried so hard to turn this luxury box into a home. I had happily arranged flowers on that counter and cooked dinners in that kitchen, but I was just decorating a tomb. And the first thing that died in this tomb was my own naive capacity for unconditional trust. I didn't pack anything. I hired an elite estate clearance company. I stood by the door and pointed. That sofa? Trash. The broken TV? Trash. That custom shoe rack he loved so much? Trash. Every single piece of clothing, every watch, every item in the master suite, throw it all in the incinerator. The uniformed workers moved silently and efficiently. They hauled away the California king bed Hunter and I had shared. They carried out the expensive Italian suit he wore to his promotion party, the same suit I had lovingly ironed for him that very morning. They carried away the smashed wedding photos where I was smiling so brightly, completely unaware I was starring in a farce. I kept absolutely nothing. Not the cheap bracelet he bought me for our anniversary, not the designer silk scarf that was probably bought with stolen company funds. They were just props in his elaborate, psychopathic stage play. The play was over. The props needed to be burned. When the condo was stripped to the bare walls, I called the most aggressive real estate broker in New York. "Sell it immediately," I ordered. "List it 10% below market value for an all-cash, 10-day close. I don't care about the money. I just want this property off my ledger." I walked out of the building and never looked back. I officially moved into the penthouse atop Vanguard Tower. This place was originally just my secret command center, the place I hid from Hunter to conduct midnight video conferences with European markets. Now, it was my actual home. Standing in front of the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the ocean of city lights, I felt something profound shift inside me. The Tribeca condo, despite its luxury, always felt like a cage I had locked myself in to play the good wife. But up here, on the 68th floor, I owned the sky. I walked into the master bathroom and looked in the mirror. The woman looking back had razor-sharp eyes. She was exhausted, but she had finally found herself again. I looked at my long, flowing black hair. Hunter used to tell me he loved it long. It made me look domestic and sweet. I had kept it that way for him, to fit the character he wanted me to play. I picked up a pair of heavy styling shears from the vanity. Asterisk, snip. Asterisk, I didn't call a celebrity stylist. I cut it myself. Thick locks of black hair that carried 3 years of submission, 3 years of lies, fell onto the cold marble floor. I cut it into a sharp, aggressive, asymmetric bob. The true face of Natalie Sterling, the billionaire predator, was finally unmasked. I ran my fingers through my much lighter hair. My neck felt cool. My soul felt weightless. 6 months passed since the gavel fell at the federal courthouse. Half a year wasn't long, but it was enough time for the dust to completely settle. Vanguard Holdings stock, which had taken a brief hit during the tabloid frenzy, had stabilized and was now surging to all-time highs. The brutal internal purge I executed, combined with my relentless push for the Times Vanguard Green Times initiative, had injected a massive dose of confidence into Wall Street. Today was a monumental day. The grand boardroom, the site of my divorce showdown and the corruption reveal, was now packed with international press, Bloomberg reporters, and global tech executives. I stood at the podium. Beside me was Julian Carter, the visionary CEO of Apex Capital, one of the most powerful green tech venture funds in Silicon Valley. We were about to sign a multi-billion-dollar strategic partnership. Vanguard Holdings was officially pivoting a massive chunk of its portfolio into sustainable, next-generation green infrastructure. It was a sector I had dreamed of dominating for years. But for me, this wasn't just a business deal. It was a resurrection. As I looked down at the staggeringly complex legal contracts waiting for my signature, I didn't see dollar signs. I saw that yellowing, hand-drawn sketch I had shown the board 6 months ago. I saw Hayden's blinding smile as he stayed up until 3 a.m., frantically sketching out solar-paneled roofs and zero-emission city grids. Asterisk Natalie.